Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, here in the hall, and also we try to welcome those who are sitting just in the front of their computers. This is the direct transmission from the basement of the very strange magic building, I would say, because this is the former, historically, it was a school, but after that, for many, many years, it was a museum of the Czech Post. And as I was living here in Smíchov in Prague 5, passing this big building looking like a castle almost every day, and nobody knew what is it. Well, now we are in the place at the venue of Designbloku 2021, right? We didn't have the last year. We had? You are one of the few exceptions that they have.
It was actually the big fun because we had Designbloku. It ended on Sunday at 10 o'clock in the evening, and then since midnight this was the complete lockdown for 8 months. So we were the ones who closed the whole culture event, and they called us from the mayor of Prague, and he said, "You are historically probably the last cultural event ever happening in Prague." But we are glad that it wasn't true.
Fortunately not, yeah.
Again, in May we could start, or June, we could start again cultural life in Prague.
Yeah, says Jana Zielinski, which is the managing director of Designbloku for many, many years. And I maybe could say that she's the person who could be called like First Lady of Czech Design, because he's behind many, many activities, including the Czech Design Awards and many others. Welcome.
Thank you.
You are at home, in fact, here. But we have a foreign guest from Romania, Maria Neneciu. Okay.
Perfect.
She does the similar thing in Romania, right?
Romania and Bucharest.
Romania and Bucharest.
Yes.
It's the whole week of a design festival.
It's a design week. It takes place every year. It's a festival. It's a 10-day festival. Based in Bucharest, but we sometimes organize small events in other cities in Romania too.
Like satellite event.
Yeah, it's the most important design-related event in the country, and next year we are going to be 10 years old. So we had 9 editions so far. We also managed to do the Design Week last year. It was a crazy experience for sure for every event organizer like in the world, because we had to take into account all the health issues occurring. But I'm very glad to be here with you, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the Design Week if you are interested.
Yeah, definitely. What I'm interested right now, just to make clear what your experience is coming from for the later discussion. So how big the event is, what exactly is
we were talking before the talk now. What's special about Romanian Design Week is that we don't only focus on product design or interior design like a Design Week usually is, but we try to put together a lot of disciplines. So we also have architecture, we also have graphic design, we also have multimedia installations. So when we started like 10 years ago, we were publishing a magazine, a cultural and architecture-related magazine, and we realized that there are a lot of people in Romania that are doing like great jobs and that have amazing practices, and most of the time they didn't know each other. So we realized that there is this huge need for a context and for an event that would basically put them together. So I think one of the most important attributes of our Design Week is this sort of mix and match of practices and disciplines. Another aspect which is, I think, important to mention is that we also tend to use very special buildings. So I don't know how many of you have been to Bucharest or how familiar you are with the city. But we do have a lot of amazing old and sometimes abandoned or underused buildings. So what we tried to do, especially in the first editions, was to open up these buildings and to try to put them like in this sort of cultural circuit of the city. And it became a sort of a mark for the event because everybody was waiting for the next edition to see what other building they will discover. It's amazing that we used some very central and huge buildings that people didn't know anything about sometimes. So it's also important in terms of, let's say, urban development and trying to basically help the cultural industries, the local cultural industries, to firstly to know each other and to meet, and in another aspect to have the city as a, let's say, scene that we can use.
Excuse me, is it just purely professional event, or is it a public event?
No, it's a public.
It is public.
It's a public event, and we try to address as many people as possible. We also try to invite students and non-professionals. It's not a fair. It's not dedicated to buyers. It's not a business to business. It's basically a huge exhibition dedicated to local designers. So we showcase Romanian designers, which can apply in an open call, and we have a creative board which selects the pieces that are going to be showcased. And then we organize this huge exhibition designed by one of our partners, a very talented architect that we work with since the beginning. And besides the main exhibitions, we also have these satellite events organized by us or different other partners throughout the entire city. Which in the end basically draws the map of, let's say, creative hubs and places in the city. So it's a main exhibition, then throughout the entire city there are a couple of other events. We also have, of course, talks and all these
conferences,
and all these other formats. But it's not an event dedicated to professionals. The design market in Romania, it's still quite small. So when we talk about product design, at our first edition we showcased like 10 projects, I think, and basically that was it. So we have a lot of very talented fashion designers and architects, and the graphic design scene is much more developed. But when it comes to product design, it was very small. It developed throughout these years, fortunately, basically we're trying to encourage these young designers to prototype and to produce their work. But the design scene is still quite small. So it doesn't necessarily have let's say, business or commercial approach, but rather, let's say, a conceptual, trying to also encourage local creativity, young students, and
the educational aspect of it.
Yeah.
And could you just compare the number of participants with the things that we know from Designbloku? How many people are attending usually in the last years?
For a regular edition, I think we had more than 20,000 visitors. Like in the main exhibitions, because we are not really able to count the ones that are going through. Yeah, it's just for the main location. I think last year we had less because we couldn't have as many people at once as before, so we need to have these restrictions. But more or less.
Designbloku, just to compare the size of the event.
Designbloku last year, of course, was very limited, so we had only a possibility to sell 15,000 tickets altogether, because there were 2-hour slots, and then the visitors had to leave the building. We had to disinfect, and it was all very complicated. But the years before, we usually have around 50,000 visitors. What was interesting last year is that we, for the first time, made a virtual Designbloku as well. So it means we scanned all the exhibitions, all the participants' installations. And at this platform, at our website, we had 123,000 visitors. So we realized that this is something which has quite a potential. and it was there the whole October, so as well 3 weeks after Designbloku was over. And the same principle we repeat again this year, because we think there are a lot of visitors who are afraid to come because of the pandemic, or are not able to come, basically. So we have decided to make this opportunity for them to see it in a virtual space.
We also developed a digital, let's say, festival, which was basically a 3D exhibitions, also some videos with the designers and everything. And people seem to be very pleased with this product too, and hopefully will maintain this product as well, even after the pandemic is going to be, let's say, over.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, talking about the technologies and the possibilities, we right jumped into the topic that we will talk about, which is the sustainability of the events. And actually, we are focusing on the design related events. And we would like to speak about two point of views of sustainability, which is the very, fashion word right now. Sustainability, business-wise, which means how to manage such a kind of event, which is a really business project, first of all, successfully and long-term. And the second topic will be the environmental aspect of such a big events, design-related events in this case. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask anyway was, does the technology and the experience we went through just last year provide you with some new ways and new possibilities how to, let's say, limit a little bit the scale of the event from the physical point of view and turn it into the online environment, but to keep the business model of the whole thing, because it has to be paid somehow. So how do you think about it? And did the last year and relatively new experience move your opinion or your views on this a bit forward? And how?
I have to say to all questions, no.
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 Surprisingly.
Yeah, because for me, the virtual platform is just support or help for the visitors. They have possibilities to see it if they are not able to come. But I think with exhibition as it is, the personal presence is not replaceable. I think it's unfortunately not replaceable with theater. It's not replaceable with art or even seeing design and with many other aspects of art and culture. Because I think we are human beings, and we some emotions which are connected to seeing and living through the pieces of art and design. It's not transferable. It's not possible, basically, only in virtual platforms. We work in long term on sustainability during our festival. So always the main exhibition and all the architecture at Designbloku already for many years is only from recycled materials. We use only for building the architecture material which was already ready to be thrown away. We have shared with other exhibitors like Art Biennale as well the construction materials. So for us it's not new that we should now start to be sustainable, because we work this way already for many years as well. All our merchandising is made from ecological materials.
Sorry to interrupt you. Now you are talking about ecology, understandable, and we will go back to this. But the main question was a business sustainability right now.
I understand, but we have decided to make this virtual platform. We decided not to monetize it, sorry. So it's for free. So there is no business model, basically. It's just letting people to see it if they cannot attend in person. Maybe in the future this can change, but I hope that still people will be able to come to see and to experience the pieces, because I think still really the life experience is not replaceable. Of course, the whole question of the sustainability of big events is very questionable, because always you will have people, if you want to make international events, who will have to travel. And this is something which is my biggest concern, because when we pay all these flight tickets, I always think, okay, but how is this sustainable model? You know, we try to persuade all our guests, which are from Central Europe, and we are quite successful that they travel by trains. So, but this is again something we do for many years, because I think it's quite natural to not to travel by airplane when it's possible to travel by other meanings, because of course airplanes are not ecological at all. So, but in general, big festivals are something which is quite questionable concerning sustainability, because you have to pay the electricity at least, and you have to gain the people together, which means some transport has to be done. And of course, some things has to be built. But I think with the building of the architecture and so on, we are quite okay, and that can be our conscious clean. But with the transport, it's the biggest issue, I think.
Well, how about Romena? Do you agree with the things that Jana?
Yes, I completely agree that virtual exhibition will not ever compare with the physical one. I would add, besides what Jana said, that I think also these events are an important networking, let's say, opportunity for a lot of designers and for a lot of professionals. So I think the physical events are also very important. And besides the experience of the visitor, which is definitely more accurate and more profound if it's going to be a physical one rather than a virtual tour, I think these sort of design weeks also have this effect of being very good context for networking, for professional networking. So yes, I definitely agree that things needs to also remain in the physical sphere. As for the business model, we had all these extra digital tools developed last year because we had to, but we didn't. There are more or less costs for us, not necessarily. So they are free for anyone who wants to use them. They were also important ways for us to promote the designers and maybe help them promote themselves and so on. But business-wise, it's not necessarily something very sustainable. As an organizations, we are more than 70% supported by sponsors, like, and we have just somewhere under 20% like public funding. So for us, it's also very important to have the events in a, let's say, physical manner, because there's also this sort of easier way for us to get these partnerships going.
That was one thing that I wanted to ask you. Well, when you enlarged the impact of the event via online some
Yes.
platforms, it also increased a possibility to display your sponsors. It's additional space for giving them something more and perhaps asking them for something more. Do you think about the online this way as well? It's also the opportunity for this.
I think on the long term, yes, this could be like new tools that we could use to maybe even get more funding. But if I think about the last year, it was more or less a way of having an emergency plan. So I think it was not necessarily a strategic move, but rather a way of coping with what happens in the entire world. So,
for me, the sponsors from our experience are only interested in live.
Really?
Yes, in live presentation. during Designbloku, this is the most important thing for them, and it is quite important and interesting because, for example, we produced Czech Grand Design Award, and it is broadcasted live on Czech television with like 120,000 people watching it, which I would say is more interesting, should be maybe more interesting for the sponsors than Designbloku, which has 50,000 visitors live. But always when we negotiate with sponsors, they want Designbloku. So that's the experience I have, that the live presentation is what they are interested in. Maybe in the future it will change, but for now as well, for example, last year the sponsors who left us, they left us because there was not possible their physical presence, basically.
Well, they probably will knock on your door in the next year because everything is changing or turning into the digital, and digital now is the very demanded thing.
Hopefully.
Every time, hopefully, let's say. We touched several times the scale of the event, and as you said, it's a lot of traveling and waste management and space and everything. Do you think that specifically your events, can you see the limit? Do you have a number of participants, for example, number of exhibitors, or scale of the area where you're operating? That is your limit. You say, I don't know, about 50,000 people is the top, and I cannot go above that. So do you have something like that? Have you ever thought even about this limit? And if so, how to solve the over demand of the people?
Well, I think basically 50,000 is the limit, because we have this number for last 5 years. So basically it's not decreasing, it's not increasing. I don't take last year as example. It was something which is completely out of ordinary situation. What I would like to do is to now more focus on Central European attendance, but not only the Czech visitors for Designbloku. We used to have around 1,000 visitors from abroad, and I would like to increase this number. What is happening now is the opposite. The number of foreign visitors is decreasing. So this is something which I think we have quite a potential to grow. But I don't think that in the Czech Republic is altogether maybe more than 70,000 people who would be interested in seeing Design Festival. That's the fact, basically, because it is still one of the most attended festivals in the Czech Republic. And even when you take London design festivals, the numbers are quite similar. The only difference is Milan. Of course, Milan Design Week has many more visitors, but that's not because of Italians or the region, but because of Asia, and because of international guests and international visitors who come, because the business is done for the whole world, for the whole export in Milan. And that's why there are the peoples. But these people, most of them are professionals, basically, who came there to make business, to write about it, to get inspired, and so on and so on. So that's the difference, really, that they have this much bigger amount of the people. But otherwise, I think there are definitely limits how many people are interested in design in the country, basically.
Yeah, I think the limits are given by the subject itself. So design is not necessarily, it's not like a music festival where you can change the lineup and then try to have a bigger crowd. I think more or less the people interested in these topics can slightly grow in time, maybe with the help of investing in, let's say, bringing as many young people or students in and make them interested in these topics. But otherwise, I think, yeah, the limitations are also given by the domain itself, also by dimension of the design markets, because I think I don't know, for Romania, for example, the design industry itself it's not growing. I think that our number of visitors was growing faster than the, let's say, design market itself. So
yeah, I think it's about as well the knowledge, basically. What was for me quite interesting, I don't know how it is now, but 10 years ago in Switzerland they made research on how many people know Vitra. Vitra is definitely number one in Europe in design furniture, and I would say it's a Swiss national treasure, basically. And they asked among quite normal Swiss public, who knows what is Vitra? I guess what was the percentage of the people who knew what is Vitra?
I would say 90%, but probably it's much lower.
30?
1%.
1%?
No, I don't believe that.
Yeah, 1%
Really.
10 years ago. So if you can imagine that means that really I think maybe in Czech Republic, if you would ask people what is ton, the percentage would be higher, or preziosa, because here the companies penetrate as well like normal households, but Vitra is really special, like a design brand. So I think we have to accept the fact that it will be never like a mass mass interest. Otherwise, we try as much as possible to get it as well among young people. We have a special school day, so the schools attending Designbloku and so on and so on. And as well, there is another aspect, and it is, for example, that the lighting festivals, the light festivals, they are more attended, but they are for free. Mm-hmm. And here you have to pay basically for the admittance, and I think it's quite okay to pay. If you want to go to the cinema, you have to pay as well.
Yes. So it looks like the size of the event is not a limit from the point of view of sustainability yet. Right? Or have you heard from anybody, well, it's too much and
yes.
you should lower the, yeah?
Yes.
Did you?
I did. For us, we are very selective. So usually we have about 500 applicants and we select around 200. So basically more than 60% are people who are not accepted to be at Designbloku. Mm-hmm. And where we can grow, I think, is still like in foreign designers, because in the Czech selection is basically complete. There is almost nobody who has some meaning in the Czech design who would not exhibit at the Designbloku, basically. But we try to focus on new talents, on new names, and promoting them, supporting and developing the scene. But still, the scene has only some size, basically. And the biggest obstacle for us to develop is always the space, basically. Or before pandemia it was. Now I think the biggest obstacle is this.
For us too, actually.
Yeah, but for us the space, because Prague has no proper fairground where you could exhibit. We have Výstaviště, the fairground, but it is in a catastrophic condition. Thank you. And it's being reconstructed, and I think it will take at least 5 years to be reopened again. And until we have really like a high profile building to be in and to rely on this every year, the Designbloku can have this certain space. And what we love is as well like discovering these other buildings, but you can add it to this, but you should have some base, where people can rely on. So I think for us this is the biggest limit.
We also, for 3 editions now, we managed to do the exhibition in the same place, so not to change it every year, because it was incredibly basically expensive to do that, and it was a huge effort to enter this new space every edition and so on. We have the same problem in Bucharest. We don't have a huge exhibition space, not for design, an exhibition space in general, or neither for art or anything like that. As for limitations, yes, the space is one of them. But when it comes to sustainability from the, let's say, architecture point of view, what we managed to do, and I think it was one of the most important things sustainable-wise that we did, was to try to reuse. We are using the same displays from the beginning. So we are working with this architect who basically developed a system, a visual system, which is modular and which is compatible. So we are reusing the same elements and remaking them in different shapes and basically reinventing them every time. And this became a sort of challenge in itself. There are these huge metal structures that also in years became like a signature for the festival. It was quite funny. At one point we also developed these awards, like Romanian Design Week awards, and we talked with this designer in order to make our trophy. And he said the element that I think is most recognizable for your event, it's the small metal cube that you use in these structures. And we were like, really? And he was like, yes, because you are using them every time in different ways. And people think of that as one of the most creative ways you can actually express a design exhibition. And people became more or less obsessed about that. Let's see what the architect is going to do this year with the displays and so on. And maybe the trophy should be just that, like this metal cube that resembles your, let's say, module from the design exhibition. And I think that was very important for us to be able to reuse in a creative way, let's say, these elements.
Okay, let's get green now. What do you have any kind of statistic records about, you know, the fuel consumption, water consumption, waste, and these things, the CO2 footprint, things which usually describes how event or the company or anybody will deal with the green things. Now, do you have something that you can really display and say, here we are and here we want to be in 5 years, let's say? Does exist anything like that?
We don't have a CO2 I think it's quite difficult to calculate that. We do have a sort of we know how much waste we try to manage it, we try to recycle. We also try to reuse all the, let's say, communication materials. And we have this amazing NGO in Bucharest, which is recycling your like printed materials and transforming them into bags and into this sort of products that they then sell. So we also have this, let's say, sort of creative way of recycling, not only the traditional way of recycling waste. But other than that, I think it's quite difficult to actually have a very strict number regarding the carbon footprint, for example.
Yeah, Jana, do you have anything like that?
As I mentioned already, we have all these rules how to manage, but I don't have the statistics. We just basically follow these rules concerning transport, waste management, merchandising, and this year we have developed our application so far that we have decided to cancel as well the catalog. So we don't have any printed materials, only flyers, which are necessary for the people to orient in the buildings. But besides that, we decided not to print anything. So this is a big step for us because we used to print catalogs and as well book every year about Designbloku, and
I have a couple of them.
Yeah, and we
They
decided
were nice.
not to them. Yeah, it was nice, but we think it's not basically sustainable. It's just another piece of paper, and so it's important for us that we change as well with the needs, basically, and I think the people can really manage to find all the materials in the website, on the website, or in the application.
Well, this pressure, or even sometimes it's pressure, sometimes it's a initiative getting from you. It's changing the environment and the way how these events are organized, definitely. Do you think that specifically designers and design lovers, as the people who are probably a bit more educated, who are keen in these topics, because design itself, designs things in a green way, let's say, or more sustainable way, does it mean that it's easier to work with them this sustainable way than if you organized, I don't know, the heating trade fair or something like that, construction? Are they more open to this, to follow your restrictions and your procedures?
Yes, I think it's even expected from us.
I see.
Because the people who love design are people who think about their environment which surrounds them, and they really think about social, economical and ecological aspects. And this is as well something I try to support in a long term. That's why I have established last year Association of the Czech industrial design, where are connected all most important companies in the Czech Republic, like Lasvit, Preciosa, Ton, all these companies, and we have decided to make quite a big restriction that at least 60 or maybe even 70, I don't remember now exactly, percentage of the production has to stay in the Czech Republic. So no China, no Taiwan, no India, and all these regulations. So this is something which I think is very important as well, to support local production, to support local products, and not to make these huge transports and emissions and all these things which are connected with the production in China. And as well, it's as well very important to support Czech economy. So I always try to find the tools how to help, because I think the role of designers will be very different from how it was in the past, because the designers used to design like chair or a bottle or table glass, but now I think they will more solve the problems. They will be like problem solvers in the future. So they will have to consider all these things, and as well, it's very important that the designers should have as well responsibility, that because usually many producers, for example, in China, they approach famous designer and they say, draw me a table, I'll sign it by you, and then the designers never see the production. And I think this is something which is very important, that they really push, that they insist on as well, like really concentrate on sustainable production of the things. And it is great that as well many Czech companies are working in this way. Like very nice showcase of this is in Museum of Decorative Arts, the other building of Designbloku. For example, the glass company Brokis, they developed a special product which is called Brokis glass, and it's only made from the remains from the glass production. So basically they are really targeting the zero waste strategy, and I think many more companies in the Czech Republic are starting to think this way, and it is very important, and this is something which you can never do if you will produce in China, basically.
For sure, I think nowadays good design, it is sustainable and it is aware of the ecological problems. I don't think you can have good design nowadays without taking into consideration all these issues. I was thinking while you were speaking that maybe the fact that we, Romanian industry, let's say, is a little bit, let's say, smaller, not to say behind, it's also a sort of an advantage because many of our designers do produce locally and are trying now to also use like old crafts and old way techniques of making their objects, which I think it's amazing, and I think it's very important to also keep that in the design practices nowadays. And as for if the designers are more willing to accept these regulations, I'm sure they should be. I mean, I think
you'll be the pioneer of the whole movement finally, right?
We're actually trying to showcase good examples of designers that are already doing that. And we also, for the last years, we also try to bring in some exhibitions from abroad, which are tackling these ecological issues, and also trying to maybe have this dialogue between foreigner designers and local designers in order for them to maybe develop their practices in that way. So yes, I think in the future designers will need to do more than just prototyping chairs and probably, yes, trying to find solutions and to solve like bigger problems, even from maybe the social point of view, not necessarily only the ecological one, yes.
Thank you. Well, I think that's the right time to ask the audience, is there any question? Chcete se na něco zeptat klidně česky, já to se pokusím přetlumočit? No. Okay, no, not yet. You are very experienced professional visitors of the international events, such as design festivals, etc. Is there anything that, from this point of view, from the sustainability, is there anything that we should follow or probably should avoid that is applied at these international or bigger national events that you have experience with? Maria.
If I'm thinking now of the big, let's say, events that have a little bit more of a commercial approach, like Milan or Stockholm, or I think there is a lot of waste in terms of producing those presences there. So I think every year the big brands come and they're making their amazing installations and exhibitions, and afterwards everything gets destroyed and they never use it probably. So I think a little bit more concern regarding their presence there should be something they should look into. As for the organizers of the events, probably the printed materials, all the communication materials are always big source of waste. But I also know it's quite difficult to be completely neutral from this point of view. So
still the presentation is more important than these environmental issues that or problems that these big events cause. I think
for many brands, showcasing their products like in a good light, it's more important than the ecological aspects, for sure. Or I don't know how many brands have in their own philosophy these, let's say, concerns. Some of them, I mean, I think in the past 2 or 3 years, everybody started to be a little bit more aware of the need of being a little bit more sustainable and ecological aware. But I'm sure the business sort of aspects are always the ones that matter the most for many of the big brands.
Jana,
it was interesting last year, or actually this spring, Frankfurt Ambiente Festival decided to make the whole only virtual festival because they wanted to know how it will work, and for the companies it didn't work at all. So everything was really made in digital, and they had it quite properly done. You could as well make the orders and so on, but it didn't work. So I'm afraid that
it didn't work.
No, it didn't work. When I talked to the companies who attended this, who participated, they said they had no result, basically, because nobody was really interested only in virtual digital platforms. So I'm afraid that's the fact. And I think basically what could help is if we focus more really like on local development, local production, but still these big events like in Milano, I think it's ecological catastrophe basically, and we have to first accept the fact that we want to have the Milano Design Festival, we want to go there, and we want to see the whole world design novelties to be displayed in Milano, or if we decide, for example, I go to Milano only every 2 years. I used to go every year, but now I really select where I go. I try to go by car at least, not to fly, and I used to go like to 5-6 shows a year, and I decide as well to New York and to many other shows, to Asia and so on, and I decided not to do it anymore, and it was already before pandemia, before all this ecological movement, because I think this is something which is really not sustainable, basically, if we will keep trying, if we will do this. So maybe in the future the way will be that there will be only really like one big show in Asia, one in Europe, and everybody will travel there, and it will be at least less zero, and the less will be local. But you cannot command anybody how they should do it, basically. But I know, for example, that when I read the article, the interview with the director of London Design Festival, it surprised me that he feels completely the same way, and that he stopped traveling as well to all these festivals that he used to travel before. But on the other hand, I'm so glad that this year you came, and that the director of Salone Satellite in Milano will come for the weekend. So, and we have many gallerists and business partners and media coming from all over the world to Prague. And I'm glad that it is this way, because it is the only way how to help Czech designers and Czech companies in their export strategy. So this is a very complicated issue, how this should work in the future in sustainable way, because definitely we can do, for example, like 10 years ago when I had the exhibition in Milano, I flew in the morning to Milano to have a look at the space, and then in the evening I flew back, and we were in Milano really few times a year. But now I don't do this anymore, and I think maybe we should start, all of us, with this, that to travel only to most important events, to most important things.
As for virtual exhibitions, I also have an example from London, actually, from London Design Festival, the Adorno virtual exhibition, which worked very well because they showcase more conceptual design. So maybe it's also a matter of the objectives you have as a designer or as a company going to such an event. They basically showcased small designers from, 13 countries, and they did only virtual exhibitions, and they promoted all these practices online, and it worked just fine. But they didn't have any commercial business-to-business sort of approach. And probably that's also a big difference somehow.
Are you a member of any association or group of organizers who are trying to reach some general common approach to these things?
Yes.
How does it work?
We are part of the World Design Week, which is the organization connecting all important design festivals in the world, basically. We used to meet every half year, twice a year, but to be honest, it didn't lead to anything, basically. So now I think last 2 years there is no activity from the people who organized it, so I even don't know if it exists. Actually, I'm not sure. You have to check. But I think that now everybody basically has so much trouble with organizing their events that to focus on some international strategy was not the target, but we will see if this will revive again.
Well, as far as I know, there is an association of the event organizers in the Czech Republic, which are mostly the agencies who are providing their services to companies, or they organize festivals, etc. They're trying to do something. They were able to develop a kind of safety, self-regulation things for the COVID period successfully to survive their business. And I'm sure that this is probably the way how it could be followed in the case of the environmental sustainability things. So there's definitely a chance to find some kind of standard for the specific market. From the other side, do you feel any kind of pressure of regulatory bodies or state institutions how to deal with these things, some kind of limits?
With sustainability?
Yeah.
Not at all.
Not at all.
No.
Not
we
yet.
also have associations of organizers of events in Romania, because we have huge music events, huge music festivals. And they are now talking about regulating some aspects regarding sustainability and ecological issues, but it's not from a national governmental it's a professional association somehow.
Yeah. Okay.
And probably it's not going to be mandatory, but rather, let's say, optional.
Yeah, optional.
But I think it would be useful to have that. I mean, I think for everybody it would be useful to have some guidelines regarding what you could do, how you could do it better, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are regulations, for example, in gastronomy, what you can use and what you can't, and of course we follow all these instructions here. Basically, with all other regulations, we already did them before. For example, I was really surprised when 2 years ago the Prague Quadriennale, the theater scenography festival, announced that they make ecological merchandising, and appeared in all newspapers. I found it quite funny because we do it for many years, but I just didn't have any thought to put it into the press release, because I think it's quite natural to try to protect the environment. So I think sometimes it's just the PR thing as well. But basically every year we try to go further with these aspects. So for example, this year we have succeeded to have for the first time that the limousine service for the guest service for the guests is electronic, that all the cars are electric. So this is something which pleased me quite a lot. I think it's a very good thing, because we usually use like from 10 to 15 cars to drive all the guests. And as well, we have made the contract for this year with Veolia, and we are going to make a sustainable prize for the best sustainable project at Designbloku, and we will support the project as well with money. So this is as well something which I'm quite pleased that we succeeded, that we will not only award the projects for their design value, but now as well for the sustainability
I think
approach.
that could be a very important tool to basically encourage the designers to have a more sustainable approach in their work, and maybe even award them for their input in that way.
I'm asking because you definitely look after the European recovery plan, which are some money coming into the European countries, and the part of it is dedicated to the creative industry as well, which is specifically in the Czech Republic. I don't know how about Romania, but this will be, you know, the very first financial help to these industries. And of course, the European Recovery Plan is very closely linked with green thinking and dream making, etc. So there will be some conditions and strict rules how to make, for example, events if you want to use these sources. Have you already thought about it, or are you interested to get some funds from this European Recovery Plan?
Yes, we are negotiating as well already with Ministry of Culture, but till now nobody knows how this will be done, basically. So we will see when some concrete tasks will be made by the state, because for now we are only being told that there are billions of money somewhere waiting for the industry, for the creative industry, but we don't know where the money will go. For example, I have already heard about some quite funny things, like, for example, that the members of the universities will be supported to travel abroad to see how the startups work, which I really find ridiculous, because we have many startups already here. You don't have to travel abroad to see how the startups work. And I don't know why university professors should do this. And I know that, for example, 50 million crowns will be distributed
But they have to
this.
go by bicycle, definitely, because
This is, I think, all really quite a not understandable thing for me. But we will see. So I'm still. We are negotiating with the Ministry of Culture, and we will see how the money will be distributed, because nobody knows, basically, till now.
Yeah.
Nothing is prepared.
yeah, no progress
in
in
Romania.
Romania.
It's more or less the same. We had some discussions with the Ministry of Culture, trying to propose us and other organizers of other events, trying to propose some very narrow and concrete things to do. And unfortunately, they did this entire strategy without consulting with the private sectors. Maybe also because they didn't have the time to do the process as it should be done, with bringing all the private sector in the discussions too. But hopefully they did a good strategy, and we'll be able to see the results.
But no matter of that, the more sustainable, the more green you will be, the better you will be prepared for getting some funds from the recovery plan. Well, I wish you a great success in building your businesses, your festivals, doing them right, doing them exciting and sustainable, because I'm one of the visitors, and I want to visit these festivals for many, many years in the future. And therefore, I keep the fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thank you, guys. I thank you, the people watching us via computer. And if you have time, go to Prague, visit Designbloku 2022. Goodbye.